Just to account, Joe Biden forgot Obama's name, despite rubbing himself in Obama in every opportunity that he gets. In addition to forgetting Obama's name, there were situations where he did not know where he was. Grown man, human being, supposedly with all of his faculties, did not know what state he was in. We have another situation where even going beyond the gas, meaning missing Kennedy's and Martin Luther King's death by a factor of 10, meaning not knowing those dates, keep calling Theresa May, Margaret Thatcher. And again, the political situation, because to me, more problematic and more worrying from the standpoint of going against Trump is the political weakness associated with you being mentally derided, constantly, mental impairment. There's so much ammo at this point because every day almost there's another thing that Joe Biden says that doesn't make sense. Either him being incoherent, him can't get out words, him not knowing Obama's name, him even getting bullied on the debate stage. Cory Booker taking him apart. Kamala Harris taking him apart. And you believe that Donald Trump is going to be any gentler with a Joe Biden that seems to have mental issues? He's not. He is not. Not to mention flagrantly lying on the campaign stops. Either he is a flagrant liar or he is mentally ill. You be the judge of which one. Neither one of those things, both of those things should be disqualifying. Joe Biden is making up war stories, things that every element of the story, for the most part, was wrong. And bristled when you pointed that out, like, you got all of this wrong. Why are you lying about this? Or are you just mentally losing it? Which one? It's a problem. It's something that needs to be talked about. When NPR asked Joe Biden about this and said, look, dude, you don't think that's a big deal? Like you not being able to remember dates and features of things and not knowing Obama's name and all of this other stuff. You don't think that's a big deal being bullied on a debate stage in the way that you were? You seem to be just a shadow of your former self. I mean, people have been telling you that you should take more naps. Joe Biden says, look, that doesn't affect my ability to make decisions. The problem here is a public doesn't know that. And the public has nothing to judge you by but what you do on that campaign stage, not to mention the history that you've had in the standpoint of politics. Meaning, if you are having mental degradation, mentally falling apart, mentally not altogether there, symptoms, things that make it come across as if maybe early signs of senility, or at the very least, not cognitively up to the task, be physically, meaning there's an aspect of cognitive function that's physical. I hope you know what I mean. Like you need to have the physical ability to discharge the cognitive impairment. Otherwise, you will get tired in trying to apply it. Think of a situation where you get sick of trying to do X, Y, Z and having maybe something that you really wanted to do at first. You're worn down by the task. Think of times when you're just outright, utterly tired and you're trying to do something mentally. It's difficult to do. You have to have a certain degree of physical vigor in order to discharge any kind of mental task. I'm making the point that Biden does not seem to be up to the task. And when the public is looking at this and making a choice on this, I would guarantee you that while the Democrats may not deride him for this, Republicans outright will. And it will be mercilessly. And he will lose over this one very specific issue. Mark my words. Biden, on the stage today, as he's given his talk on climate, his eye starts to fill with blood. Now, this may be a blood vessel that burst in his eye, but it's like the stucco that they have holding Biden together just kind of fell off a little bit and it's like, and somebody's like, shit, get the, sculptor or whatever to put the stuff back on. But doesn't this kind of lend back to the same argument of mentally unfit, physically questionable? I don't hit Biden because of his age. But it's something to be said that people of advanced age, questions arise on whether or not they are mentally there, because it's just known that as you get older, sometimes your mental and physicality slows down. There's nothing wrong with that. There's only something wrong with it in the context of what you're trying to do. And if what you're trying to do is become president of the United States, I am going to point that out and say, hey, we have a problem here. This guy's not mentally altogether there. There's no other process whereby you do something and they call it a gaffe. If you're at work and you continuously mess up, they say he's not mentally altogether there and they fire you, especially if you're in an at-will state. Do you honestly believe that a man who is being told to take more naps and you have almost a year to go before you even get the first vote is up to the task of running and being president? Let alone, what do you think he's going to do when he get into that office that has any show of vigor and energy that is needed in that? He's not that man. He just wants to be president. I'm going to show you Joe Biden, bleeding eye. Some people said that this was Photoshop. Doesn't look like it.
Next election. Daniel, welcome.
Would I tell you this? If people are having questions about your mental fitness, what you don't want is to be on a stage with your eye bursting into blood. Let's take a look.
China is current.
Look at it. Look at it. Look at it.
China is
Do
currently
you see that?
the largest emitter of CO2.
Come on. All right.
Next election.
All right. I'm going to blow this up. All right. So look right here. His eye is filling with blood.
Daniel, welcome.
China is currently the largest emitter of CO2.
Wow. Mentally unfit, physically questionable. This video doesn't necessarily look hoaxed at all.
Next election.
This
Daniel.
video looks what it is. And Biden is indeed, 78 years old, 77 years old. So there's something to be said about somebody who has advanced years. And of course, their body is not necessarily going to be as rigid and rugged as, somebody who's younger. But this is a choice for president. And if the man is showing mental issues, cognitive issues, cognitive issues, and right here, it looks like he's physically breaking down. Is this really the guy that's up to the task
No. Well,
to be president? Come on. There we are.
welcome.
China is currently the largest emitter of CO2. How, if at all, would you try to get China to lower its emissions as president?
I would make it real clear.
Wow, that's wild. That's wild. I tell you what you don't want. What you don't want is to have a bleeding eye when there are questions on whether or not you're fit for the job and fit for the task. And you know who put this video out? A right-wing site. You know who put some of the other videos out dealing with mental cognitive stuff? Right-wing sites. Right-wing sites are going to challenge him on this very specific issue, and they are going to nail his ass over and over and over and over again. And they're going to ask one question: is this man up to the task of being president? Do you want to take a chance with somebody who seems to be losing their mind? And they're going to run their campaign on this notion that Biden is mentally unfit for the job. They are going to deride him mercilessly. Mark my words. I've been right on this stuff. I've been freakishly right on this stuff. Mark my words. So, yeah. Not going to hold it long. I'm just going to point that out. Kalita, I have to be honest. I have seen younger people who have vessels popped in their eye Looked ugly for a few days, but it happens. Oh, Kalita, I don't doubt that it happens. No, that's not really the issue. I think the thing that people are pointing out is that there becomes a cacophony of resonance around a particular question that is being asked around whether Joe Biden is up to the task of being president. And in the context of that, his mental fitness is being challenged. And not just his mental fitness, at this point, part of the mental fitness thing goes along with the age thing, which kind of goes along with the body and the processes of it. It is unfortunate that he has a bleeding eye in the context of a question of whether he's mentally fit, because that's going to fit within the context of, is this guy up to the task? I mean, the moment that somebody has to tell you to take more naps, you shouldn't be president. Honestly, I'm being straightforward. If you can't remember Obama's name, you probably shouldn't be president. And I understand that Joe Biden wants to be president, fair enough. But I don't believe that Joe Biden could take Trump in an election. I think he would get bullied. I honestly do. At one point, I used to think Joe Biden could take Trump. I think at some point you may even have videos of me saying, well, I think Biden and Sanders are the best matchups between Trump. I don't believe that now. He looked bad in those debates. Look back at those debates. And look back at the debates he had with Sarah Palin and Paul Ryan. He was a different man. He was a different man. Nothing Obama does should give Joe Biden any credit. Joe Biden was a fly on the wall. The vice president is utterly powerless, without exception of if something happens to the president or something takes place in the Senate. By the same token, if he wants to own Obama's pluses, he has to also own his minuses. This goes beyond the mental fitness thing, by the way. Meaning the challenge to Joe Biden goes beyond just Joe Biden not being altogether there. Joe Biden is also a flagrant liar. Joe Biden is saying he opposed the Iraq War. Joe Biden voted for the Iraq War and was an avid advocate for that war. Not just advocate for it, cheerleader of that war. And you can find video of Joe Biden advocating for that war when Joe Biden is saying that he was not doing that he was pushing back. He's a flagrant liar. Joe Biden at one point said he was pushing for civil rights, or he was walking in civil rights. That wasn't true. It was found that wasn't true. Not to mention the plagiarism that takes place, that he's done casually over the course of his campaign history and even in this particular campaign. I mean, the issues with Biden go beyond that stuff. One of the arguments that they try to make against Trump is that he is a flagrant liar. You lose that ground with the Joe Biden because Joe Biden is a flagrant liar also. Again, the military story that was so flagrant, the Washington Post called them out on it. And, even on, again, supporting the war stuff, outright lying about that, if the Democratic Party wants to make the argument that they are the party or that Donald Trump is a flagrant liar, Joe Biden is absolutely the worst person to use to make that argument. There is a history of Joe Biden flagrantly lying. And so that's not even long time ago, recent history. He doesn't seem to care. He has a flagrant disregard for any notion of reality and truth. And if you're going to say, and you're going to say that Donald Trump is a liar, which Donald Trump is, well, the same thing is true for Biden. Or, again, he's going senile. And both of those things are not mutually exclusive of each other. I'll leave it here. Jesus Christ, my system is like frozen. Yeah, the system's frozen. Yeah, and there's one other thing. One of the attacks on Biden goes beyond his mental acuity, if my system would act right. All right, here we are. So, a few things. Joe Biden, if Joe might, mental illness stuff, fair enough. But look at this record. My argument was always that Joe Biden wasn't going to stand a chance in a primary because Joe Biden's record is utterly and entirely atrocious, and that he has to own that record in the primary. A group of lefty voters is going to take issue with that one Joe Biden. Well, electability has a stick-to-itiveness associated with it, but maybe his record is starting to be aired. Medicare for all, Joe Biden is against. Expand Social Security, Joe Biden is against. Student debt reform, Joe Biden is against. Proof of living wage, Joe Biden is against. And beyond that point, going back to Joe Biden's old record, Joe Biden voted for NAFTA. Joe Biden voted for the Iraq War. Bankruptcy bill. When the big banks and credit card companies pushed to change the details of the bankruptcy law to trap millions of Americans in student consumer debt, Biden sided with the donors and helped Republicans pass legislation. Social Security. Biden was into cutting Social Security. Biden repeatedly sided with them to voice support for cutting Social Security. And that is heretical for a Democrat to do. You might as well call yourself a Republican if you're going to do that. Climate change. As scientists warn of impending climate disaster unless we reduce fossil fuels, Biden's judgment has led him to put forward a middle ground plan whose details allow for an expansion of fossil fuel development. Again, healthcare. I mean, it's one vote after the next that Bernie Sanders is making the point. Meaning his point is going beyond this notion that Biden is not fit or not rap tight. That's my argument. Biden is not rap tight. His point is going into whether he's rap tight or not, he's been making horrible choices in regards to the American public. He should own these choices. When Bernie Sanders made this point about the Iraq War vote, he turned around and said, well, I mean, I was immediately against it. And I was one of the strongest advocates against it. He lied. He just lied. I'll leave it here. I mean, I think Biden is falling apart mentally and physically. And beyond him falling apart mentally and physically, he is a flagrant liar, which means you lose that ground when you're dealing with Trump in the election. And they are going to deride him mercilessly. I know they think he's more electable now because the Democratic Party is not really hitting him like talking about. Meaning, they haven't tested his chin in the way that the Republican Party is going to test his chin. And to some degree, that is to the detriment of the Democratic Party because that makes them weak in this sense. Biden they thought Hillary Clinton was more electable. They got it wrong. They thought they were working with the Russians. They got it wrong. And now they think Biden is more electable. And I am telling you, he is not. There's a year between now and the time these guys make their voice known. Biden is flaming out. And I still say will flame out. Sanders is beginning to catch him in the polls. And I suspect what is going to take place is as more of his record gets known in these debates and more stuff like this happens where his eye starts bleeding or his speech gets slurred or he goes into this kind of weird humbling stuff in one of the debates, he's going to fall away. It's going to be Warren and Sanders. And on that, that's a different race. That's an entirely different race. Biden is bleeding out, you dummy. Biden is bleeding out. All right. Like, share, subscribe. Oh, man. If he gets the eye patch. Oh, he can't do the eye patch. He can't do the eye patch. The eye patch is too much. The eye patch is too much. It's another symptom that adds to the question, at least in his ability to lead the most powerful country in the world when he has trouble forming sentences and keeping his eyes open. Right. I know, right? His cognitive capabilities are an important, argument point, meaning it's a point of contention. It's a fair argument on whether this guy is up to the challenge of being president of the United States when he can't form a cohesive sentence, when he's forgetting various facts and figures, when he is forgetting where he is, when he don't know Obama's name, when he loses a certain degree of political acumen to not know that you don't raise the hands of segregationists in a party where 90% of blacks vote Democrat. It's a lot of stuff. It's not just one thing. I guess that's the point that I'm making here. And Bleeding out of the eye, yeah. It's not one thing. It's kind of the cacophony of everything else. Joe Biden wants to lead the presidency of the United States. I believe that. I believe that he wants to be president. I don't want him to be president. There may be some blind people that want to fly airplanes or drive cars. It is up to the public to tell them no. If he can't stand on a debate stage without bleeding out of his eyes, then this other stuff matters that much more. If he can't get through a sentence, an event, without ending up with a video finding him stammering, not being able to communicate a particular thought, not forgetting somebody's name, if he can't go through an event without always having a video like that, then maybe he shouldn't be in office. These are not gaffes. If it happens all the time, they're not gaffes. They're signs of cognitive impairment. And it is a fair point to evaluate whether or not someone with cognitive impairment should be president of the United States. Yes, we have a guy now. And yes, it may be funny to see two senile people fight it out on a debate stage. Belligerent and just out of it. But that's not what I want. Joe Biden needs to fail. And part of my reason that Joe Biden needs to fail is he's not altogether fair. Sanders is not losing his mind on a debate stage. He's not stammering into nowhere. He has a vision. He knows exactly what he wants, and he's going out and making that vision felt. There's a difference in those things. I don't care about his age. I care about his effectiveness and his ability to communicate what he wants to accomplish. And in this case, Joe Biden, part of what he has lost is his ability to communicate effectively and in a way that makes sense. I'll leave it here. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks all.